Hi there, and welcome to Inside the Wooniverse, a podcast brought to you from the corner of Fringe in Maine. I'm your host, Colette Baron-Reid, and joining us today is a spectacular human named Dr. Jennifer Freed. Now, she is fascinating. She's an internationally recognized psychological astrologer and the best-selling author of Use Your Planets Wisely, Master Your Ultimate Cosmic Potential with psychological astrology. I just get goosebumps even hearing that. I'm so excited to dive in. She spent over 30 years consulting worldwide clients and businesses on psychological, spiritual, and educational topics. Some of her other credits include, and there's a lot here. She was the clinical director of Pacifica Graduate Institute, a regular contributor to GOOP, the monthly psychological astrologer for the Sex with Emily podcast on SiriusXM, and she's even penned 10 books relating to personal growth. She's the co founder of the Santa Barbara nonprofit AHA, which is dedicated to helping teens, families, and educators feel safe, seen, and celebrated. Welcome to the Wooniverse, Jennifer.
I love your intro and you have great energy.
Ah, thank you. Well, especially when I've got somebody I really want to talk to, which is great. Anyway, let's dig right in. So, I love to go back to the beginning. What was your childhood like? I always find, especially if somebody moves into the arena of psychology, there has to have been some kind of a petri dish where you sort of, found yourself. What was your childhood like? And then were you always interested in the cosmos and the way people think?
Yes, and so
Okay.
deeply, deeply loved by both my parents, totally trauma ridden childhood, which is why anyone goes into psychology, I'm sure of it. And at a very young age, I was very interested in astrology, but for no reason I can actually explain. I think it was a calling. And then
Hmm.
by the time I was 18 and a half, I moved to Santa Barbara
Hmm.
and I started my spiritual journey and my own therapy at that time because I really needed it.
Yeah.
And that course has stayed consistent since then. And I just turned 65 proudly. And
Yes.
it takes a long time to work out trauma and to be of
Mhm.
service and to be joyful. And that's what I'm all about.
I love that, and I'm right behind you. I'll be 65 in July.
Yay,
So
us!
yay us, we made it, aha. So I really wanna dive in to psychological astrology. So, what do you feel it can teach us about ourselves? And tell me what it is, because it really is what you do. So let's really dive in.
My version of psychology, being trained as a PhD and marriage family therapist and trauma consultant, is psychology is really the study of patterns and how to cope and how to live a meaningful life and undo patterns.
Mhm.
Astrology is your cosmic DNA. It shows you from birth what your cosmic plan was. What are your challenges? What are your divine possibilities? So I combine both. When people come to see me, they get a reading of their chart, but they also get a lot of coaching on how to practically address the patterns and possibilities.
Right. Oh, I love that. So, for example, say, do you do progressions? Do you actually talk to people also about how the chart is going to be
The
moving them
transits and
into
cycles, that's a
a
huge
transit?
part of the coaching.
Yeah, because I was just considering that we evolve through this, and I've always seen astrology as a kind of, that cosmic blueprint. It is a fixed system, but it's constantly evolving as well, and you can either meet it at the highest level of its opportunity or the invitation. Say, I had a bunch of Pluto transits, so I had to make Pluto my boyfriend for a while, right? Okay, I can't beat this one. So so the idea of what it is that we could do with those things as opposed to just a straight prediction, "Here's what's gonna happen." I love this approach.
I'm not at all predictive. I am
Uh-huh.
empowering. We are
Right.
in partnership with the divine. So, yes, we have cycles and transits and lessons, but
Yep.
we are the students and we participate at whatever levels possible. And I'm firm believer that if it's not going well for you, you need more help.
Right.
You know,
Interesting.
there's no, for me, I get help all the time and I have a magnificent life, but I don't have one shred of shame about, hey, I'm stuck here. Better find somebody that can help me with this because I know our purpose here is to be divinely lit with inspiration, joy, and meaning. And if I'm not feeling that, not not blaming myself, saying, I need more tools.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love the way that you approach this too. When I do my work, it's prescriptive. I always say, "This isn't predictive, this is prescriptive. This is like, here's how you could evolve. Who do you wanna become, and how does this help you track, this evolution of the self? And if you need more help, exactly, you need to go get help." Like, even this past year, I went into EMDR. I did a whole
That's my
bunch of
specialty,
Oh,
EMDR. I'm a firm believer in it. It's what's helped me. So yay,
me
yay, yay.
too.
Let's tell
Me
people what that is, okay?
You
It's
tell, you say.
it's a behavioral therapy that actually helps you undo the repeating and perseverating traumas that live in your body and brain. And it's very measurable, it's quicker than talk therapy. And if you have a great practitioner, you can actually undo trauma. And you know you're in trauma when you keep looping.
Yeah.
Looping is evidence of trauma. And we've all, I think, experienced trauma. Sometimes it's situational, something like a car crash. Sometimes it's just being neglected and abandoned through your childhood, and you have to rewire that. So that's what we're
Mhm.
up to.
Love this. So, let's bring it back to astrology because that's really a lot of people know you as that, right? That's, that your psychological astrology. Astrology is a big piece of that. So, let's what in a person's birth chart, say, I was coming to you and you're looking at my chart, would there be any indicators in there that I would have been in the opportunity for trauma?
Oh,
Do you
totally. Yes, a
Yeah.
lot you can see in a chart that absolutely. So some of the obvious ones, this is very technical, but oh well, here we go. Scorpio rising. If you have a Scorpio rising, it means you're coming into this life to experience lots of death and rebirth, and that
Mhm,
often is trauma bound.
mhm,
Pluto with any personal planet, either
mhm.
transit or natally, that's going to show you a lot. Saturn with Venus or Mars or the moon, definitely. There's a lot of indicators. I haven't met anyone that hasn't had some trauma. But one
Sure.
thing we find out in astrology is it's not a fair playing field. Some people have exorbitant amounts of trauma and it shows in their chart, and some people not as much. And I don't judge that because we're all learning.
Sure. I mean, there's no such thing as anybody coming in with the identical chart, even if they have the same birth date.
Exactly.
Right? So, yeah, it's because there's environment still does play a part, right? I mean, it's not
But
just
Colette, what is your birthday since I know 1958?
so yeah, no, July 17th,
Oh, so
1958.
you've been in a massive Pluto transit.
I have. It's finally coming out the other side, and I can tell you that that's during the Pluto transit. I had to face a lot of stuff that happened to me when I was 19.
Wow.
Um, Very interesting, all around trauma, rape, et cetera, that still was pervasive. It wasn't that I looped mentally about it, it was that I kept having experiences in the outer world that reminded me of the thing that I hadn't
Re-stimulations, they
right,
call it.
re-stimulation,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so finally I just said, "I need to go deal with this. This is something I thought I had dealt with and didn't." And then there were other things as well too, but I don't think I've ever been calmer in my life since I went through the Pluto transit, 'cause I
Well,
think my last hit was
Pluto transits burn our ego to the ground and reveal to us any unhealed pieces. When you attend to them instead of run from them, as you have, it's the old adage, the barn has burned, now I can see the sky. And there's a very peaceful
Oh.
feeling about that.
So this is really interesting. Now you have a new book called A Map to Your Soul, and I really wanna dive deep on that because I do think that this is really kind of the representative of all what you do right now, and I think it's gonna be very useful to the audience to hear about this.
Yes, well, this book is really the culmination of all my years of experience with thousands of clients and studying astrology and wanting to offer to people that are at any level of learning a book that's going to enhance their life. So, what
Right.
I did in A Map to Your Soul is I broke it down into the 12 houses of astrology
Oh,
and worked on the four elements, which I'm going to explain: fire, earth, air, and water, and how the key to a happy, fulfilled, and laudatory life is to live a fully expressed life. And I want to
mhm.
say that again because I couldn't be more clear at this age in my life that people that are joyful, fulfilled, and contributing are living a fully expressed life.
Yes.
And so my book, in each house or subject, talks about how to achieve that in each of those domains. So
Right.
let me first talk about the elements and then the 12 domains. How does that sound?
Love it.
Okay.
Love it, love it, love it.
So the four basic elements that are in all of us are fire, which relates to Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. And fire is that quality of dynamism, passion, engagement, adventure, and this extremely go for it kind of energy. Okay? We go down into Earth. Earth is Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, and Earth is stability, consistency, slowness, method, conservation. That's Earth. Then
And
we
I
go
don't have
up.
any in my chart. No
What?
earth. I
Okay,
have no earth in my
so we'll
chart.
talk about that. I want to
No
talk about.
earthless. Earthless. Yes, okay.
Then we rise up into air, and air is Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. Air is spaciousness, flight, inspiration, objectivity, logic. And then we go dive into water, and water is Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, and water is feeling, empathy, mercy, forgiveness, tenderness.
Mhm.
Now, that's a basic description of the four elements, and all of us have them in our charts, all of us.
Mhm.
However, everyone's astrology chart leans more into one element or two than the others, and there's an imbalance.
Yep.
And
I'm
where
all
you
fire.
yeah, and where you find the imbalance, this is where you attract issues. So, for
Mhm.
example, in your case, Earth, you're low on Earth. So you may find yourself hampered at times in your life by really stodgy, greedy, stuck, really perfectionistic people that irritate the crap out of you.
Okay.
I mean, that's how it works because whatever we're low in becomes a projection in the world of people or things that confront us as low vibrations of that element.
But I also have an entire team of people who are earth signs, like, on purpose.
Super, super smart. And they are, I also have too much fire. So all my Capricorn assistants and my partner, they all say to me, "Whoa, Nellie." They're all like, just slow down, and I'm burning. So, okay, the elements are fascinating. Now, if you look at each area of life, and how those elements play out. And here are the 12 areas of life corresponding with the 12 houses in the way
Right.
I define it in the book. The first is self presentation. How do you show up the minute you're in a room? The second is your values. What do you really value? Do you live your values? The third is communication.
Mhm.
How are you listening and talking? The fourth is your actual home and how it represents the elements and the feelings in the home.
Right.
The fifth is creativity, how you create and how you fall in love. That's a big one. The sixth is health and habits. The seventh is partnership and what I call your support language. The eighth
Mhm.
is sex, sex, sex. The ninth is your belief systems and the way you travel. The
Mhm.
10th is legacy and career. The
Right.
11th is friendships, kinships, and what I call your sacred crew. And
Right.
then the 12th is spirituality, vices, and psychic abilities.
Mhm.
So in my book, I cover all these 12 domains and give very practical exercises for how people can be fully expressed in each of these domains.
Right.
And I'm convinced that if you work on it, it brings you so much happiness and joy to open up all the elements in each of these areas.
So, let's add another layer to that, if you will. So say you take the 12 houses and you look at your chart. Now, for those of you listening, you wanna look at your chart, you'd wanna make an appointment with somebody like Dr. Jennifer Freed, or you'll go to astro.com and download your chart and try and figure it out there. But say you know your chart and you have, it's distributed, right? So you're distributed, you might have a whole bunch like I do in the 11th house, but I'm a 10th house chart, which made total sense after I got my chart fixed because the birth time was wrong, and I used to think I had a Virgo rising, and I used to tell the astrologers, "My Virgo is broken," because they'd be
You're
telling me all these
Libra?
things.
Are you Libra?
I'm a Libra, 0 degrees Libra,
You
yeah.
look exactly like a Libra rising. Libra rising, it has the kind of beauty symmetry thing going on. You totally have that.
Thank you. But so if you were to then somebody could actually use your book and go, "Okay, here's where I've got too much, here's where it would be balanced." And then you learn to recognize, like what you said, like this would come to you as an opportunity for you to face it, but not just the negative, right? So you
No,
were
no,
saying,
no. This book is all positive. It's not like
yeah.
this is
No,
where
I
you're,
know.
yeah. But I,
But you said the challenge, right? You were saying about the challenge if you have no earth and you might be challenged by people who are stodgy, people who are this, people that, or you would choose to have them around you because you're missing that,
let
right?
me give myself as an
Yeah.
example. I love
Perfect.
self-deprecation. Ready? I mean, but I
Yeah.
love myself, so don't worry about it. Okay, so I have a Sagittarius rising, which is all fire. And then I have two planets in the first house, fire. So my tendency is to be a bull in a china shop when I walk in a room. My tendency is to take over, be dominating, be fiery, be opinionated. And, I have brilliant ideas. I'm not putting myself down. And I do a lot of leadership out of that fiery energy. However, I'm on a growth path. So I have
Right.
learned it is not wise for me to lean only into that fire. When I
Right.
walk in the room, now thinking of the four elements, the one I want to highlight the most is grounded, stable, loving, warm energy, listening energy, earth and water. Let me savor my fire for when it's wanted or asked for instead of blazing in. And just having that awareness, bringing it to consciousness, what my tendency is, but I am not bound or held hostage by my tendencies.
Oh,
We
I
can
see.
choose. We can choose.
So this is really about being mindful of all of these
Whole book
aspects
is
of your
about
personality.
the
Mhm.
whole book is about consciousness raising and choice
Right.
and expansion.
Right. So you went through the 12 houses. So what else is in the book? So let's actually just go through it because I think everybody would be really fascinated to hear what's in your book. So you have the 12 domains and you talk about the elements. Do you also then
Do a
go
lot of
through the
psychology. It's a lot of psychology. So let me give you an example, okay? I'll
perfect.
do it on your show. So the third house is about communication. Well, that's nice, but what is communication? And what I
Mhm.
point out in the book is that we rarely truly listen to other people. And we have four habitual ways we don't listen. And I name them as elemental. So, fire, toxic positivity. Oh,
Oh,
Colette, you've gone through a Pluto transit. You'll be great. You'll rise up. You're fabulous. Totally glossing over you and your pain.
yeah.
Second, Earth. Earth is you've got a Pluto transit. I'll fix you. I know just how to solve it. That's not listening either. Air. Air is, I am listening to you, but only to tell you kind of the best advice and the different ways for you to think about this that you won't have to feel anything.
Mhm.
And then the fourth, water, is I'm over identified with you. I feel everything you're saying. And instead of listening to you, I'm identifying constantly, emotionally, and merging into you and not being able to help you at all. So then you have to ask, well, what is real listening? What is real listening?
And
Listening,
what is real listening
well,
according to the elements?
listening, fire, complete presence and engagement, passionate, riveted attention. That's fire. Earth, anchored, centered, stable, unmoved, just holding space. Air, the ability to reflect and remember the content. So let's say you're telling me about your Pluto transit and the trauma you suffered at 19, that I say to you, I've heard you just now tell me that you've worked through this gigantic assault and that you did it with EMDR. And then the air is ask the right question. So tell me how you're feeling now. So air is all about reflection and summarizing. And water is objective empathy. So empathy is this: I am thinking about how this must be for you, but I am keeping differentiated emotionally. You have your experience. I'm not going to hijack it with my emotional experience.
Mhm.
So that's
Mm.
just one chapter of inventories people take about how they tend to talk and listen, and also some instructions about how to actually listen.
All right. I like to talk about how people deal with their obstacles.
Great. Let's do that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. How do we evolve beyond our how do we evolve beyond our patterns? Like, are there ways in which we can really enhance our experience of evolution?
Completely. So that's what I call the ninth house of beliefs. As you know, being a metaphysical advisor and midwife, our limited beliefs create our reality. Trauma limits our beliefs. What we found through EMDR is that there are about 8 core negative beliefs, and every single person has one. And it's about understanding that that's a default, it's not the truth, and how to then move from that negative belief to a positive belief, which opens up your whole life. So let me give examples.
Yeah.
Most common negative beliefs: I'm stupid, I'm worthless, I'm unlovable, I'm bad, I'm not safe, I'm out of control.
Mm,
So mine is I'm bad. That's the one I always go back to. Do you know
okay.
what yours is or no?
I'm not safe.
Got it.
Yeah.
So that is the trauma brain. We all have it. It's called the default network. If you don't know about it, you involuntarily go back there to make sense of the world.
Mhm.
If you have an intervention spiritually, psychologically, and you practice, I can change I'm bad to I am a good person most of the time. You know?
I get it. Uh-huh.
And for you, you certainly know that now you can be safe most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too that and I wonder if your parents or your mother, so my mom was a Holocaust survivor. So, and didn't tell us that sh I mean, raised us as Christians. We didn't even know until my mid-20s that there was any Jewish in there, right, anyhow, because she came from Germany and became somebody else. So that was like this secret thing that I always tapped into and never knew what it was. Anyway, so I think a lot of the "I'm not safe," I got that in the womb from her too, because I don't other than I was very safe in my home, that they were loving parents, terrific people. There's a sense, yes, obviously things happened to me when I was much older, but, when you think about where do you get that? So do you have anything in the book that, for example, that's able to trace even
Yes,
astrologically
yes,
from the mother
yes, yes,
to
yes.
the child?
Yes, this part's more psychological in the book, but yes, what you're referring to is epigenetics, which
Mhm.
means we do have the traumas of our ancestors embedded in our cell structure.
Right.
It is really good to excavate that and go, how come I don't feel safe when actually nothing's happened to me, and then
Mhm.
you do this excavating work and you realize my negative belief is I'm not safe. You trace that back to any memory, including your mother's memories, and you
Sure.
start to undo it. And
Mhm.
that's what you're talking about. And this is the ninth chapter in my book. There's inventories, there's ways for you to rework your belief systems. But a lot of it is just know you're not these negative beliefs.
So, what are some of your, say, for example, you're describing these 8 beliefs, right? And then you're also linking it to the 4 elements, is that correct?
Yes,
So would you say that some people have specific negative beliefs because they may have an imbalance in their chart, for example, in the elements?
yes.
Okay,
So
so
let's
let's
say
dive into that.
that you have so much fire as we do in our chart. That can be a negative belief. I'm too much. I'm
Yep.
right. And then that, for me, that leads to I'm bad. I don't know where it goes for you because I just came in with so much fire and, I was loud and I was bossy and, all the good things for girls, by the way. But it wasn't that welcome when I was my young age. So I got a lot of feedback about that. So, yes, fire would be you're too much, you're too fast, whatever. And
Mhm.
that's a negative belief that you would have to mitigate and undo, and also maybe to learn there are ways you can soften. Now, if
Right.
it's earth, the negative belief would be I'm too slow. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. Very much to do with Capricorn and Virgo,
Mhm.
Taurus. And so then you have to work on I am good enough. I'm not perfect. I'm just right. You have to turn these things. If it's
Mhm.
air, if you have a lot of air, the negative belief would be I'm scattered, I'm not focused, I'm disassociated, all those negative
Mhm.
beliefs. And you have to learn how to bring that air down and say, I'm smart enough, I can focus, and I can listen. And then if you have so much water, as many of my children do, uh, oh my gosh, do they suffer from I'm overwhelmed, I'm
Yeah.
unlovable, I'm ashamed because
Mm.
the feelings are so big. And then you
Mhm.
have to realize feelings aren't prophecies, they're just moments. And I can handle my feelings, I can manage them, and I can be a very compassionate, sensitive person, but be very grounded and stable. So, Elemental 8 works like that.
So would you say then if someone has a missing element in their chart, say for example, you are all fire, let's say you have no water,
Mhm.
that would you say bringing in the element of water or the aspects of that element would help give you more of a balanced viewpoint of the world?
Completely.
Yeah.
And
So
again,
let's
in
dive
my
into that.
fourth chapter of the home, you can actually add the water element to your home and benefit. So, like little fountains or water features, anything that will bring water more into aliveness and give you even environmentally a touchstone with water. But water
Mhm.
emotionally for somebody that doesn't have water would mean go to therapy, express your feelings, do a feelings journal. All of that would help balance, definitely.
And what about the other signs? Let's go through them all.
So
Or no
if
or elements.
if you don't have enough fire, some people, not us, I work a lot with clients that have very little fire and they don't take risks. They're not bold. They're kind of timid. And the best way to get the fire going is again, stare at a fire, light candles, and the biggest one is get the inner fire going. You need to do cardio. The people with the least fire just don't want to do cardio. Like, I
Interesting.
don't want to exercise. But actually, you've got to build the inner fire, and you have to eat foods that make you warm. You don't eat cold foods. Don't eat ice cream, those people with no fire, because they need to warm up their bodies and their systems. So that's if you don't have fire. If you don't have enough earth, that's easy. I don't have too much earth. I spend a lot of time, and I hope you do too, in nature with trees and
I
the
live on a farm,
garden. Yes.
tons of trees.
And so earth needs grounded, stabilizing activity. And in that case, again, in your home, earth tones, gardens, and beautiful landscapes that you can have as paintings, or you can, look out your window, hopefully, and see them. But also with earth, do rituals that are repeatable every day.
Mhm.
Earth is consistency and replication. So actually do stuff every day on a schedule. That's very earthy. Now, if you don't have, we already covered, you don't have enough fire, you don't have enough earth, you don't have enough air. Air. Okay,
Yeah,
ready? So if
yeah.
you don't have enough air, people, and this is, again, these are all very big challenges. They're so worthwhile. You actually have to read more. You have to actually learn more. You have to pay attention to facts. You have to get your mind in a logical, observant place. Mindfulness meditation, read spiritual books, actually engage your mind in being uplifted and having an overview, because that's air.
So, what was your favorite chapter in the book? What are you most passionate about?
Oh, wow. When you said that, I think the sex chapter, but it's very, I'll just be so truthful. I've lived a magnificent life, and because I was very fiery, I had lots of lovers. And now I've been with somebody for 26 years, and we have a very good sex life, but it's not like our main purpose or topic at all. But I've been on Sex with Emily, and I counsel a lot of people around sex. And so that chapter has really lit it up for people because it's the sex languages. And
Sure.
so it's a new
Ooh,
thing.
let's go through that.
And it's a new thing. And I enjoyed writing it kind of in memory of all my fun. But it's just funny to be this age, and it's not like, oh, I'm so obsessed with sex anymore, but I liked the chapter.
Right? I totally get it because I mean, yes, I was a wild one myself and enjoyed it. I totally enjoyed it, but now it's like I'm gonna be 65. I'm like, "Oh, really? Do we have to talk about that? Okay, wait. Oh, right, that." But then it goes into different directions, and I also have a phenomenal marriage with a great sex life. I don't have an issue, but it's not the number one priority anymore. Like it
Right.
was in the beginning, I'll be honest.
Right. And I think it's really good as elders to say to people, as the hormones change and you have true intimacy, one of the joys of my life is I'm not sexually identified or obsessed. I have so much more
Yeah,
richness in my life. When I was young, with all this fire, it was like, you know. So, anyway,
yeah.
the sex chapter, so we can talk about the elements of the sex
Cool.
chapter. I'm going
Um,
right to that eighth house. All right, here we go. Ready?
ready.
All right, so there's a lot of assessments in the sex chapter that help you get very conscious about your preferences in the sexual domain. But it also starts to help you realize there's a lot more options on the menu. And it's a great conversation starter with a lover, because if you do this chapter together, you're going to get a lot more creative and a lot more options. So the first
Interesting.
assessment is getting it on. And you're supposed to circle or check all that are your preferences. So, for example, fire. I like to initiate. I like to dominate. I like to be spontaneous. I like to use toys. I like to wear costumes. I like to do it vigorously. I like quickies. I like to do it adventurously. So that would be fire. Earth.
Okay.
I like to go slowly. I like to linger. I like to be touched everywhere. I like a gorgeous setting for making love. I like to plan for it. I like it certain ways at certain times. I like lots of holding and cuddling before and after. Air. I like to discuss it. I like sex talk. I get aroused by my partner's mind. I like to get kinky. I like to break rules. I like to make sure you get off. I like erotica. Water. I like to feel you with me. I like to express my feelings for you. I like to feel deeply connected. I like to look into your soul. I like to feel merged. I like to cry during or after. I like to feel very emotionally safe. So that's just one inventory of many in this chapter, but it shows you that if you start to get interested in the elements, wow, you could get some new ideas or start to get very curious about which of those your partner is most interested in.
So what if you listened to that and said, "Well, I don't have any earth, but I like what earth says." So how do you explain that if a person, say, for example, doesn't have any earth in their chart?
Well, we all do have Earth in our chart. So let's just remember this.
Yeah, and let's
Earth,
explain that then.
yes, okay. So in astrology, there are all the elements in the wheel. What we tend to say is when you say you don't have Earth in your chart, you're saying you don't have any planets in Earth.
Right,
But actually, the houses still have Earth. So you
okay,
actually do have the Earth houses, the sixth house, the second house, and the 10th house. So no
okay,
matter what, you have access to that.
okay.
And the whole point of my book is we all have access to these things. And if in your inventory you went, I really responded to the earth ones, good for you. And that just means that's a place you're really exercising your earthy capacities. But the whole point is there may be some options in water you haven't considered or
Right,
explore. Yeah.
right. Yeah, 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 I get it because I was listening to that going, "Well, I really wasn't into water at all." It's like, I could try some of the,
Linger and look in the soul of the eyes and
yeah,
feel and cry and like, look at you. No, 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 no. But
I'm gonna
anyway,
laugh.
I'm out.
I'm out. Oh, that's too funny. Yeah, so that's very interesting. So I could see a lot of people taking these inventories, like these quizzes, I guess, right, to discover the way that they operate, or because I definitely think that the fire piece was very me, but I also had a lot of air. But I don't have a lot of air. But then it's like, what are the preferences? It's something that I think. But it's interesting because when I think of this, my husband and I did our composite chart,
Yes.
and we're a triple Gemini
Wow.
in our composite chart, even though he's an Aries and I'm a Cancer, and he has a lot of earth in his chart, but we meet together in this place and we never stop talking, him and I. We're blah, 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 blah. So it's kind of interesting. I'm dying to read your book. I think it'll be really, really a good thing to do. So when you look at what about death? So typically the eighth house is it's sex, but it's also shared resources and it's death too. So can we talk about that a little bit?
Well, I think that
Oh, yeah, private
death
debt.
is one of the greatest mysteries that we all will participate in. It's often repressed and denied and not looked at in our cultures.
Mhm,
And yet it happens every day. And as we get older, lots of people we know and love will die. So the eighth house can point to the way that you work with death in your own life and also experiences you might have with death. So, for
mhm,
example, and this is technical again, but some of your people will get this. I have the planet Uranus in the eighth house. So then I have experienced sudden deaths,
mhm,
illumination or awakening through death, because Uranus
mhm,
rules that.
right.
The sign you have in the eighth house, the planet you have in the eighth house, will give you some sense of how you will be metabolizing death and perhaps even your own death. So the old ancients would say the eighth house might also talk about how you might die. So in my case, it could
Interesting.
be a sudden death, and I'm okay with that because whatever it's going to be, it's going to be.
Happy, healthy, dead.
Now, what about you with death? What is your eighth house?
I don't know, actually.
Well, Libra is your rising, so Aries is your seventh, so that would mean Taurus is your eighth.
Right.
And
Taurus would be my 8th.
do you have any planets in that eighth house, or you don't even
I
know
don't
if you do?
think so.
Okay, well, Taurus in the eighth Could
I
be.
don't think I do. I don't think I
Okay, I'm
do.
going to give you the best news ever. Taurus in the eighth could be a very sensual and lovely and beautiful death because
Great.
Taurus is ruled by Venus. So it could be like you're in the exact place you want to be, you feel complete, you're, totally embodied and unafraid, and that would be beautiful.
Interesting. Well, I wonder too, though, when I think about death, it may be we would also include letting go of things. Like, are there, for example, the psychology of a human being is going to be based on a number of universal life experiences that they have, they process, they evolve through. Some of us, evolve, like you said, have an inordinate amount of trauma to work through. Other people, not so much. There's all kinds of things around that. But what about, styles that is there anything in your book that help us let go with more grace? For example, like, do you know what I mean? Like, how do we all let go according to the elements or according to astrology?
Well, that is a great question. There's nothing explicit, I think, about letting go.
Mm,
But I think we can talk about that right now, which is that's the whole point of life, isn't it? To live
surrender.
fully and surrender at the same time. And
Right.
I'm certainly working on that all the time. I bet you are too.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
elementally, let's talk about this. It didn't write about it in the book, but I can talk about it now. Fire would be let life burn through you. Like,
Mhm.
know you're here so temporarily and live as if dying wouldn't stop you. That kind of
Ooh,
her. Live as if dying wouldn't stop you. So that would be fire. Earth would be tend the garden, knowing everything has a season and you will be composted too. But tend
ah,
the garden, right?
right, right.
Air would be it's all in the possibilities. And we will never, ever walk this way again. But we are like the air, just constantly being recreated and reimagined life to life.
Mm,
It's a spaciousness, a kind of objectivity about we are just being redistributed lifetime to lifetime.
right. It's like neutrality in a way.
It is a
Observe.
neutrality,
Mhm.
totally. And then
Mhm.
water is just the absolute bliss and rapture of being a feeling, sentient being that passes through this Garden of Eden. Just really the reverence of like, we feel this so deeply. And it's the way we're connected to all of life. And
Mm.
then we let go like the waterfall.
So we've talked about death, we've talked about sex, we've talked about the capacity to let go. Is there anything that, let's say people right now, for example, they're looking for practical advice. The world is so chaotic, people are afraid. Yet we all believe that we're here for a purpose and a destiny, etc. So how would getting to know our elements and these houses help us in co-creating our reality in spite of or both and doing it in the storm and yet knowing that we can't identify just with the storm, we have to still do our work. So can you speak a little bit to that, to the
Completely.
co-creative abilities? Yeah, good.
You're going to love this with all your 11th house. So, the 11th chapter is the most important chapter of the book, and everything leads to this chapter. It's about your sacred crew. And in March, the planet Pluto goes into Aquarius for the first time since 1776. Pluto, as you know, intensifies and brings to the fore every issue that has to do with the sign that it's in, Aquarius. Aquarius is
Mm,
the groups, the organizations, the kinship, the lifeboat. And the most important thing all your listeners can do in 2023 is
mhm.
establish their sacred crew. And you can read my book, but I'm going to tell you the cliff notes right now. Your
Good.
sacred crew is comprised of 8 to 12 people. They can be family, friends, colleagues, professionals that are committed to uplifting the world and uplifting you. And what you need to be a sacred crew instead of a loose association of friends is sacred agreements. What's needed in order to change the planet is a million different pods that have conscious agreements about what it means to be a sacred crew. Some of my agreements, you'll all have to make your own, but they start with, you will be there for me when I'm down and hold me in my grief and sorrow and despair. And you will be equally happy for me when I am at the top of my game and celebrating. Two, you will always speak highly of me and also hold other people to speak highly of me as I will do for you. I've got your back. Three, you will be honest about your boundaries and needs so that I know what they are and I can try to meet them.
Mhm.
Four, you will make events that are significant to me a priority, but you will also take good care of yourself. So we'll discuss when and how you need to show up for me and me for you. And these are just some of them. But what
Right.
I found is I put these out to my people,
Mhm.
and everybody was really excited about it and wants to be part. But the biggest call when you make your 10 agreements, whatever they are, is you have to be accountable to them.
Right.
It really is a calling. And part of the sacred agreements is we will all be working on making the world a better place. There's way too much time that people have been spending complaining.
I
People
agree.
have been spending polarizing,
Yep.
being on the sidelines, heaping criticism at others. We don't have the time anymore. So
Mhm.
this crew is like, we are going on the direction of transformation and we will hold each other accountable. That is how everyone can participate in the remaking of the world that is a good and beautiful place for all people and the earth.
I love that. So, you mentioned Pluto is transformation. So I want to go back to what you'd said earlier about Pluto entering into the sign of Aquarius the first time since 1776 because it's a 200 and what
40
93.
something, but anyway, yeah.
140
Yeah.
something, okay. So, I think because it's going to be around for a while, I would love to drill down a little bit, get a little bit more granular on what that actually means in terms of the weather report that it brings, right? So we know that we're not predicting anything, but we're saying these are the qualities of when Pluto goes into Aquarius, this is what happens.
We learn from history. Between
Yep,
1776 and 1796, we had the American Revolution, we had the French Revolution, we had Hawaii invaded by Captain Cook and the indigenous people massacred, and diseases came to them, etc. So we learn to upgrade from that. We
right.
know Pluto in Aquarius is about freedom, it's about equality, it's about upgrading from power over to partnership with. And that's why, for this beginning entrance into that Pluto and Aquarius, everyone has to do a gut check of, how am I helping the world be a more equitable place, or being part of the greed that is choking other people's ability to live a free and good life.
Mhm. So let's go back to that because if in fact Pluto and Aquarius is about more equity, and liberation, freedom, and what that means, like we know that the revolution brought in a lot of the opposite. Also, right? So there was more of yes and more of not. So we are yet again at that crux point of making decisions about what that could mean. So, would you say that every time that there's a Pluto return or like a big
Yeah,
planet like return like this, we have an opportunity to do it better?
that's what am saying. And that's why the sacred crew is like, it doesn't start with you politicians do better. It starts with, we have to do better and we all have to know we're part of the change. And if we are accountable each and every day to spend some part of our day making the world a better place for ourselves and others, there's an extraordinary chance that we don't have to do the dark side. of the revolution, which was bloody and horrible and
Yeah.
violent.
Look what's going on in Ukraine. Look what's going on. Look at also the earthquakes that, all of the climate issues that we've been having too. I mean, it's like everything is burning.
Well,
So,
yes, we've come to a no turning back on the cause and consequence of our misbehavior.
mhm. Tell me about the relationship between the rise of authoritarianism and this Pluto
Okay.
transit.
Well, that was really very well articulated in what's we still have Pluto and Capricorn. Pluto
Right.
then intensifies issues of authority, Capricorn. So during this Pluto transit, there was the rise of totalitarian, authoritarian power over, incredible power plays for dominating people and overlording people. That's very Pluto and Capricorn. We're
Right.
still in that. And we
Right.
will return a bit because Pluto will go into Aquarius, then go back to Capricorn for a bit in 2023. I believe that that's what set up the French Revolution and the American
Right.
Revolution. You
That's
can't,
where I wanted you to go.
yeah, you can't actually believe that you can say, I will live like a king and collect more and more taxes and dues from everyone else. And I don't really care if you are starving, if you are being killed with guns. You can't actually do that for too long. People will rise up.
Right.
So we're in the period now of enough already.
Good.
And the Pluto in Aquarius ushers in the possibility that the people take back the power, but we can do it without violence if we participate instead of observe.
Right. We can't stand by the sidelines and say nothing. We have to actually do something. This is interesting because, again, we're looking at history repeating itself globally right now, and only it's worse because they didn't have nuclear weapons back then, and there wasn't the same amount of the population didn't exist on the planet the same way either. But and it's interesting now how we're trying to undo, like we're starting to spotlight everything that had occurred at the beginning of the transit, right? And we're seeing all the terrible things that were done, and then now we're come back again to say, "Okay, so what are we gonna do now?" And I mean, you like to believe that we are all going to step into it, but and do the right thing, but we don't need everybody to do it. Look at the concept of the imaginal cells, right? That Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about that, about how metamorphosis happens, that the entire culture can change if just a small concentrated group of people have those crews that you're talking about. Doesn't have to be everybody. You don't have to, it
Has to
doesn't,
be a significant amount
yeah,
to change the
significant.
vibration of
Mhm.
consciousness, and we can do this. And yes, the stakes are much higher. But
Right? They're higher.
in a way, humans do their best when the stakes are higher almost every time. So I wish it didn't have to be that, but we can do it.
So what would be some of your, what would be some of the things that you'd like to tell somebody if they've never heard any of this, stepping into this life that we're walking into right now? What would your book do for them? Like by reading your book, what could they do differently?
Well, I think it's not so much do differently, it's realize your extraordinary, magnificent possibilities and live them more intentionally. So
Right,
I'm not about changing people. I'm saying there's so much more to you than you ever knew. Dig in.
right. Right. But when you think though, when you dig in, you're gonna naturally have a sense of, I mean, we're always changing. We are stories in motion. We're always in motion. So I get what you're saying though. It's not about here, change yourself, but it's more discover yourself
It's
because
like
then you
this. It's like this. You think you're this, read the book, and you'll realize you're this, and you will have very practical ways to start experiencing that.
oh, I love it. That's beautiful. So let's pull an oracle card and see what the spirit of the universe wants us to conclude with before we move on to the next section of our wonderful interview.
Okay.
So I'm going to pull a card from my deck, The Shaman's Dream. So this works on synchronicity. These are,
Love it.
universal
Let's do it.
universal archetypal experiences that every human being could have, just described through the lens of the archetype of the shaman. So here we go. What else do we want to talk about today? Oh, yes. Okay. So this is something oh, I love this. Okay. So this is the bold step forward, the farther gate. So in your, what is our bold step forward according to the elements? So like,
I
how would we
believe
get
that our bold step forward is fully understanding, which you know very deeply, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience and getting very clear that the spiritual part of us, when connected to practically every single day, will guide us to a better life every time.
Oh, I just love it. Okay, we are going to switch gears now and travel into another dimension of the Wooniverse called the Tea Time After Party, a place where we kick up the fun just one more notch. And joining us now is my executive producer, Connie Deletti. Are you ready, Jennifer and Connie?
Yes,
Woo!
bring it,
Yes.
bring it.
Bring it. The two fiery people and a Scorpio with lots of water.
Love it,
You
love
know
it.
what? Yeah, well, but actually, I was looking at my chart as you were talking, and I don't have any air, so that's very interesting. I just never noticed that before.
No
Okay.
air.
I
Study
have
birds,
fire and water and yeah.
study birds.
Yes, yes, we love birds, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to start. Jennifer, do you have a talent that other people might find strange and unusual?
Well, the first thing that came to mind is I read napkins. So you can crumple up a napkin and I can give you a psychic reading.
You're a
That's
napkin reader? That's so
Yeah.
cool. I
do you
love it. Love it.
call
Do
it
you
napkinomancy?
napkinomancy?
Excellent term.
Napkinomancy.
Coin it here. Yes.
Amazing.
Napkinomancy. Oh, I have never heard that before. That is so cool. I love it. Okay. Tell me a quick example. Like, do you actually read it like to reflect?
At a bar, give me your
Okay.
cocktail napkin. You crumble it up, put it in my hand, you drop it in my hand, and I get a whole psychic reading. It's amazing.
Cool. I
And
got
it
to
Wow.
started, of
yeah,
course, over a few drinks that I realized I had this talent when I used to do that. But now I
love
still
it.
do it. Yeah.
That's fun. Connie, your turn.
Wow, okay, hard to follow up with that one, but okay. What what was the best and worst style choice you've made?
Oh, that's easy. I'm notoriously bad at style. So my best bad choice was somewhere in the 80s. I got my head buzzed, purple bangs, like some kind of mullet. I looked
Wow.
freaking horrible. That was my worst. And I think my best, honestly, is having two really fussy daughters who just
Mm.
told me I had to get a life with fashion. I mean,
That's incredible.
Love it. Love it. Okay, if you could be wildly successful in another profession, completely other, if you weren't doing this, what would it be?
solidly big wave surfer
Oh,
and rhythm and blues singer.
nice.
I've actually thought about this a lot because I'm certain that I'm calling that in another time. Yeah.
Oh boy, so an
Love that.
R&B surfer dude right here.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's amazing.
That's so great.
So, what is the weirdest dream you've ever had?
Oh.
Oh, weirdest. Well, when I was in sixth grade, I had this very, very vivid dream of this beautiful boy who was my age, and he had a burn all over his left side of his face. And I woke up because he was so distinct, going, I don't know that boy. Why am I dreaming this? I go to school that day and they go, there's a new kid in the class. It was him.
I know. Those God shots are interesting. Like, look, and there's nothing to really beyond that. Oh, wow, I saw that. I know people always say, what does it mean? I went, that may not mean anything. It just is that the veil opened up and boom, there you saw something.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And that just reminds us how connected we are. It's fabulous.
So, if you could be a supernatural creature, what would you choose to be?
Oh, well, I would like to be a hybrid of a fairy and a mermaid because I'm
Okay.
really into the ocean. I swim with dolphins, but I really am into the magical fairies in the forest. And I think I would be a new combination of the mermaid and the fairy, and I can morph into either one at any time.
Oh, that's cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you would
I
be a
love it.
very cool supernatural
You
creature. I
would.
love it. All right, last question. If you could relive one day of your life, Jennifer, one day, which day would you choose?
Well, okay. When I was very first in love with my partner, we had this magnificent trip to Big Sur. And you know that first part where you're in love and everything's glimmering and shimmering and timeless and you feel like a goddess? That's the day.
Mhm. Love it.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. Wasn't that the best conversation ever? To learn more about Jennifer and all of her offerings, you can visit her at jenniferfreed.com. You can also stay in touch with her via social media on Instagram and Facebook. And we will have all those links for you on our show notes page. So either click the link in this episode's description or head on over to itwpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jennifer. You were an absolute delight with all that fire. And boy, you and I would have gotten into a hell of a lot of trouble if we knew each other when we were young. I'm very happy I didn't know you.
Me too. We too much.
So, what did we learn today? Well, I love that we got the bold step forward card because that really is about everything that she was talking about is being able to use astrology and the elements and the houses, all about making decisions and taking those bold step forwards, especially with all the big changes that we're coming up against. I mean, come on, the Pluto transit, that's the, especially America, right? That's like 1776. It's the Pluto return of America. I mean, really, there's so much to heal and so many new opportunities to make better choices. I think it's really great. Anyway, thank you for listening. Until next time, I'm Colette Baron-Reid. Be well.